Today, I'm going to give you some tips on installation for the FlexShade tension zip overhead shade system. If you follow some of these tips, you'll find that your installation goes smooth and trouble-free. When you receive the system, it's going to be all boxed from the manufacturing factory. And when you want to unpack that, you will have a head box with the hem bar already attached, fabric on the roll tube. You'll have side channels, and then of course you'll have your mounting hardware, as well as a packet of springs and pulleys which are used for the tensioning system. Those you can set aside for later. After you unpack and lay out the components of the product, I suggest that you open the head cover of the head box, and you take out two screws, which I've already removed. The head box cover hinges up and is removed. We're exposing the fabric and the motor and the spools for the tension cords. And then the hem bar will also be right here. You want to carefully pry the cover off of this. Get some plastic pry tools or put tape on your screwdrivers. You don't want to damage the paint. You get under one corner, pry it up, and then it'll pop off. And you can then remove that in preparation for installation. You'll notice that there is a tension cord already spooled onto the big spool on each end of the head box. Very important to keep that organized and don't let that get tangled up, because that's going to be something we're going to use later as we go through the installation. The tension zip is going to come with one of two different bracket options, either a set of single brackets meant to go on top of a rafter and bolt directly onto the bottom of the side channel, or the dual system, which bolts down to the rafter and has a dual mounting bracket allowing two side channels to be mounted to it in the case you have abutting systems. This allows you to have 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter, they can just be set together. There are some very important dimensions to keep in mind as you're beginning to prepare for the installation. The key one is that the mounting brackets themselves are going to be mounted 1 1/4 inches in from the edge of the side channel itself. The overall centerline dimension of these brackets is 2.5 inches in from the width of the head box. So if you have a 16-foot wide head box, you're going to be 2.5 inches in total from the full width of the head box. When mounting the brackets, what I recommend you do is you split the bracket in half. It's going to come to you as one piece. You split the brackets in half, and as you can see here, I've already prepared the side channel to accept the top half of the bracket. The bottom half gets screwed down to the rafter. The top half will then get attached to your side channel. You can see I've already got some nuts installed here that the bracket attaches to. Those nuts are installed earlier by removing the block at the bottom of the side channel as per the instructions. You can see here that we have the top half of the bracket installed onto the bottom of the side channel and the base of the bracket installed on what would be normally a rafter or around the perimeter of a skylight or something like that. Your brackets need to be installed so that you have one bracket approximately 6 inches in from each end of the side channel, and the additional brackets you get, depending on the length of the side channel, would be spaced approximately every 48 inches to give it even support. You can also notice that there are some small teeth on the side of these brackets which allows for them to be adjusted height-wise. That's in order to adjust the overall height of the system in case you're trying to clear something underneath, or as importantly, it'll allow you to adjust for any dip or bow that might exist in a rafter, because this side channel needs to be perfectly flat once installed. Once you get the preliminary installation done, your side channel's mounted on top of your brackets, and as I mentioned, you want to leave that loose so that these side channels can slide for squaring, which I'll show you in a minute. In addition, you notice that on every side channel there's a piece of tension cord installed into the side channel. That cord is going to be used later to pull the master cord back from the motor spools itself on both sides in order to complete the unit. When you have the block off at the bottom of the side channel during the initial phase of preparing to put the bracket on, the two square nuts that were installed for each bracket on the bottom of the side channel, you also need to have a couple of nuts slid in for the spreader bar. You'll either have 1 or 2 spreader bars depending on the size of the system. If you have 2 spreader bars, you want to put 4 nuts into each one of these tracks and then put your block back on. This will be installed later at the end of the installation. Once you have your side channels installed, it's time to get 2 critical dimensions set. 1, double check to make sure that the width of your side channels to the outside is exactly matching the width of the head box in 3 positions. The parallel nature of these side channels is absolutely critical to it working, and the dimension must match the head box. If not, then you need to adjust your mounting screws at the bottom or do whatever you need to do to get them parallel. The next and just as important measurement is the squaring measurement. So squaring is done by measuring diagonally from the corner, top left of the side channel to the bottom right of one, and diagonally to the other one, corner to corner. Those dimensions must match. That's why you have one side channel generally tight and the other side channel you've left it loose to slide, so it's very easy to square. Once it's square, use your Allen tool to tighten down the bolts and lock the side channel down so you can then move on to installing of the head box. Once your side channels are in place, you then want to have a helper get your head box up close to where you're going to install it into the side channels. It's important to extend the fabric about 12 inches off of the head box before you try to install it. It makes it a lot easier to get it into the zipper retainers. There's another very important thing to double check before you start this process of installing the head box. You want to make sure that the tension cord, temporary tension cord that's in the side channel is coming out from underneath the pulley on each side, not over the top of the pulley. So this temporary tension cord should be going under the pulley. The second thing to confirm is that, and this would be factory wound, but is that the tension cord coming off the large spool is coming off the top. So in essence, when you're all finished, the cord's going to come off the top of the large spool and go under the pulley when we get it installed. This is absolutely critical to proper operation. At this point, you and a helper are ready to lift the head box and insert it into the side channel. The head box is supported by these metal pegs that are coming out of the end covers of the side channel. They support the entire head box. There are a couple of screws in here you can see, screw holes. Those are for screws that will come in from the side of the side channel once installed, and that will secure the head box to make sure that it can't come out. It can't come out on its own generally because it's going to be under tension, but these are just extra safety screws that would go in here. Lift, tilt, and insert the peg into the side channel evenly. It's very tight tolerance, so it has to go in evenly. You can see I push the fabric out. Again, making sure that your cord is coming from under the pulley and your other cord is coming from the top of the pulley. The next step, once your head box is installed, is to pull the cord through from the main spool through the side channels. You tape your temporary cord to your large spool that was a large cord that was attached to the main spool. Tape those together in a clean way so that they can go through the pulleys. Once it's taped together, then you reach down or go down to the other end or have a helper pull the cord through from the other end. Making sure that nothing gets tangled, that everything feeds cleanly through the pulleys. And tensions up, just to keep it organized. Then repeat on the other side. Once you have your tension cords pulled all the way through your pulleys, the next step is to deploy the fabric to approximately the halfway point on its length. The halfway point is where your spring tension is at its least, and it's the easiest where you can do the preset on the tensioning. So I'm going to deploy this by powering up the motor, and while it's in kind of a manual mode, deploy the fabric out where you need to pull it by hand with a helper. Generally, you'll be underneath the unit, and that's where you'll extend it to. The next step is to feed the tension cord in and around the pulley on both ends of the hem bar and pull the cords out so that it is ready to have the springs and the tensioning system set up. This little handy locking plier tool from Harbor Freight will make your life a lot easier to reach down and grab this when going around the pulleys. Now it's time to set up your tensioning cables and your springs. Different size units have slightly different configurations. Please refer to the instructions for the exact routing and configuration of the cords. I've pre-routed this where the cord comes out from around the pulley as done before at the end of the hem bar. This one goes up around to a pulley on a spring here, back around to another pulley, creating a block and tackle effect, and then it's going to terminate at this cleat. You can see I tied a small knot on the cord here, approximately 1.5 inches from the cleat. That's what's called your preload. So you preload the springs at this point where we deployed the screen halfway. Now the knot is tied so that when your helper puts tension on it, or you do it with a tool, you pull it out and you lock the knot down into the cleat. In order to make sure that you did this right and to check it later for any stretch, I've also made a mark on the hem bar itself, noting where the spring began and where the spring terminated in terms of its stretch. That way you can check it as we process through the final adjustments of running the screen. Okay, we've now got the whole unit tensioned up. Everything's looking good. Now it's time to test it. What we want to do is, while we're in momentary mode, we just want to run the screen to make sure that it's running smoothly before we set the limits. So I didn't go all the way. I'm going to bring it back up to the top and start the limit setting process. One really good pro tip is set your upper and lower limits approximately 3 inches from where your final limit is going to be. That allows you to better test it and make adjustments and not have it running up to its final limit. Once you've run it and set your limits to where the partial setting position that I mentioned earlier, run your screen back out to approximately halfway and stop it. Check to make sure that your tension is good on your cords on both sides and evenly by checking where those springs are stretched from the original marks. One really great pro tip is if you need to put more tension on it or less tension on it, don't retie additional knots. Simply take your screwdriver, loosen the screws that are holding the cleat in place, and move the cleat either further away to tension or a little closer if it's too tight. Once that's done and you tested it again, snap your covers on, close your lid, and you should be all set. Thanks for watching the quick install video about our Tension Zip screen system. If you're on the job or before the job, if you have any questions on any of the things we covered today, please don't hesitate to call the office or visit us at SummerSpace.com.